These steps are deeply inconsistent with the Minsk agreement and Russia's responsibilities under Minsk. They're also not de-escalatory steps. These, in fact, are escalatory steps. So they are very concerning. And this is part of a consistent pattern that we have been watching closely over the last 4 months of Russia's continuing escalatory steps and threats against Ukraine. We have been watching very closely over the last several months Russia's preparations to do so-called false flag operations to make it appear as though there was an attack on Russian soldiers or Russian-backed forces as a pretext in which they could use to further invade Ukraine. There's any number of scenarios that we've been considering, and we have seen this before. This is something that is well tested, and it's from the Russian playbook. And so one of the reasons why the United States, along with our partners, has been making public some of what we have been seeing being prepared in terms of these sabotage operations or false flag operations is to make the general public, make the Ukrainian public, make the entire world aware of this possibility. And so we are ready if and when Russia takes such a step. So President Biden has had many phone calls with President Zelenskyy over the last several months. Secretary of State Blinken has had many phone calls with Foreign Minister Kuleba, and other U.S. officials, myself included, have been staying in regular touch with our Ukrainian partners, as well as our allies and partners who are also talking to the Ukrainian government all the time, whether it's the Germans or the Italians or the Poles or any number of visitors to Kyiv in the last several weeks and months. President Biden had a good phone call with President Zelenskyy just last weekend on Sunday. They talked about the entire situation and the way forward. And we are committed to remaining in close touch with the Ukrainian government at all levels in the coming weeks. There's no plan as of yet for an in-person meeting, but we will maintain these telephone and video meetings in the coming weeks. No plans for that sort of travel anytime soon. However, President Biden has also been staying in regular touch with President Putin. He had another phone call with President Putin over the weekend as well, in which he made very clear, once again, to President Putin, that he faces a clear choice. Russia can either choose to walk through the door of diplomacy, which the United States remains willing to engage with them in areas of mutual concern, or they can choose the path of escalation and confrontation. Unfortunately, all indications we have seen in the last several weeks and days suggest that Russia is choosing that latter path of escalation and confrontation. We hope it changes its mind. We believe it's not too late. We remain committed to working with our partners and allies, including the government in Kyiv, on diplomacy. But we have to be prepared for any contingency, whatever may come, whether Russia chooses to engage diplomatically or whether it chooses further escalation and confrontation. Just this year, the United States has provided nearly $700 million of security assistance to Ukraine, which is the most we have ever done in 1 year. Since 2014 and then Russia's initial invasion of Ukraine and illegal annexation of Crimea, the United States has committed billions of dollars in security assistance. And that's not only for weapons and capabilities, it's also for very important training for the Ukrainian military to make it more capable and effective to deal with Russian invasion and Russian incursion. So we very much hope that those capabilities will not be tested in the coming days, but nevertheless, we remain committed to doing what we can to help provide security assistance to Ukraine, and that assistance would continue in the event Russia decides to further invade Ukraine. The humanitarian situation in Ukraine is something we have also been very focused on, whether it's in Donbass or thinking through the scenarios of the humanitarian consequences of a further Russian invasion of Ukraine. And that's both thinking through the scenarios within Ukraine in terms of internally displaced or whatever hardship may come from the economic consequences of a Russian's invasion, but also working with countries that border Ukraine and helping them prepare for any humanitarian consequences that may flow from that. The United States is committed to doing whatever we can to help Ukraine in terms of its own economic stability. And obviously, this crisis has brought about greater instability when it comes to the Ukrainian economy. And that's why just yesterday, the United States announced another $1 billion sovereign loan guarantee to Ukraine. That's the fourth such billion-dollar loan guarantee we have offered in the last 8 years. And that's one sign of our commitment to helping bring about better stability to Ukraine economically. And we'll be working very closely with you, Ukraine and other partners around the world in the coming weeks to ensure that Ukraine, as best it can mitigate some of the negative consequences of Russia's threats. We are still working in Ukraine, and the movement of some of our diplomatic personnel to Lviv is just a temporary step we're taking out of an abundance of caution. But U.S. diplomatically is still working in Ukraine. We're still providing services to our citizens, and this temporary step is meant foremost for the safety and security of our diplomats in preparation for any contingency, but we will remain committed and working diplomatically in Ukraine in the weeks to come.